Hello and welcome to another episode of Between the Covers. If you just come into the broadcast, tap the screen, say hello, let us know where you are watching from. Who am I? If you haven't seen me before, my name is Daniela Bleckler. I'm an author, book journey mentor, founder of a company called Conscious Streams Publishing, and we transform diverse writers into successful published authors. On the bookshelf behind me here are just some of the 200 plus books that we have published over the last 6 years. I'm absolutely passionate about providing a platform for unseen, unheard voices so they can have their stories shared and voices heard so they can educate, inspire, empower, entertain for generations to come. So what is this show about? This show is about really getting in between the covers into what it takes to actually write and publish a book. Sometimes I interview authors, sometimes I interview experts in the industry, and today I have an extra special guest who I'll introduce now. Let me turn that music off. His name is Nick Wells. I met him in April last year at London Book Fair. Actually, one of our favourite people that we met. He had a really exciting stall there. And he is not only the founder of Flame Tree Publishing, he is a musician. He is the founder of These Fantastic Beasts. He is also the brainchild behind these beautiful books. This is just one example: African Myths and Tales, the Lost Nations stories. He will tell you there's a whole array of them: Hidden Realms, alternative history. And we've been working together over the last, I don't know how many months, maybe 9 months. I've been helping him to source writers to enter their short stories for the particular books. And this particular book is African ghost stories he's looking for. And I'm going to bring him right into the broadcast, who can explain it a lot better than me and introduce himself. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm great. Tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
I'm publisher of Flame Tree, as you just mentioned, and we kind of have a mission really to really expand the reach of our open submissions. We publish lots of lovely books, lots of lovely notebooks. We do calendars and things like that, but we particularly have a mission to try and bring in as many writers as possible. And it's a little bit too easy to bring a sort of stereotypical white male European and North American writers. It's much harder, I think, partly to do with the ecosystem of publishing, to bring in writers from the huge black diaspora, which of course is where most of our favorite music actually comes from. So we embarked on a process a couple of years ago now, really, where we started to add in very, very direct books, black sci-fi, African First Peoples shared stories, which is very much about Aboriginal origins, as well as South and North American, as well as African continent and Asian continents, South Asian continent stories, but very much an emphasis of just changing the gaze. It's all very well for me to say how wonderful books are, but actually sometimes, I just don't have the right perspective because I have a different tradition, and so we're seeking people from different traditions to have to tease out different voices. Sometimes they're neglected voices, sometimes they're marginalized, but sometimes they're also from them a majority in their own country. So our method usually is to try and find a group of editors and someone to write the introduction who are from the communities that we really are trying to navigate towards, so that we're not imposing our view, but we're creating a place, a safe place, if you like, a safe space where people can express themselves in a way that makes sense. It's very hard to do that, which is why we've teamed up with Danny and others actually to bring the voices to our list.
Amazing. And I love that, what you do, you're bringing sort of old marginalized voices to the fore, and I can see some of those books behind you there. Can you just show us some examples? You've got the black sci-fi and the behind you there.
Yeah, so this is a particular case. So African Ghost will be in this series here. So this is Immigrant Sci-Fi, which was published this year. You can see it's a big chunky book. It's a beautiful book. It mixes older stories, classic stories, from around the world, and it looks at the impact of well, it looks from the point of view of immigrants as they come into new countries and become part of the landscape, part of the people. But usually we hear about it from people who often feel a bit threatened, but actually don't see how scared people are who when they travel so far themselves. And often people aren't doing this because they think it's a great idea. They're doing it because they absolutely have to. So this sort of book is very important in our view, really. But so this is the black sci-fi stories which I mentioned to you. But we also have lots of books on African myths and African folk tales in other series. So Egyptian, African folk and fairy tales, East African folk tales, Southern African. We're working on Central African folk tales at the moment as well. We're trying to gather that sort of connection between the ancient world and the modern world, storytelling right through the history of civilization from early oral traditions to modern imaginative storytelling and the deep roots that people have.
I was going to say, I love that as well, because plenty of stories in the diaspora are words that were, we had the griots, we had the storytellers, we had, so many stories that were told through, orally. And it's something really special to have them all in one book. Not only have them all in one book, but to have, the old stories mixed with the modern as well. And then obviously having this spin on the different themes that your books are going through. Speaking of themes, I can't speak this today. Speaking of themes, tell us a little bit about this particular theme, African ghost stories.
Well, yeah, so African ghosts, that word ghost is a slightly tricky word, because actually in European and American terms, the framing of that word ghost, it has a slightly scary context to it, slightly formal context to it. It's often has a sense of someone who's departed too quickly, who is resentful and is hanging around. But actually in other traditions around the world, ranging from Mexico through to Japan and obviously Africa in particular in this case, spirits are very much part of the world and the way of being. So it's that connection with the past, the continuity of life. So we happen to be in a present, but that present is very much part of a past and looking forward to a future. And so we're really looking at the many different, the mirror ball really of the way that people understand that word ghosts and what it really means. So often in an African context, ghosts are lively and entertaining, and they tell stories from the past.
And full of wisdom as well. Our ancestors are greatly revered.
Yeah, exactly. And so they carry the knowledge of the past into the future through the present. And so we're really trying to look forward. We're looking for stories from perspectives of African and African diaspora sources. And to help us, we've got a professor of African literature from the Cameroons. We've got a Black British a writer called Chinelu Onwulu, and I'm looking at a script here because some of the names I find difficult to pronounce. I'm really sorry.
Well, is she doing is she the one doing the forward?
The forward writer is Nuzo Ono,
who's
a Nigerian British writer. Yeah. And Chinelu is lives in Toronto. But so we've got these very different from different places. So we have diaspora and we have African, and that's sort of Cameroon's obviously in the sort of center, Nigeria very much sort of north west. So that's just important to have these different perspectives: an academic and a writer, someone looking from the outside, someone looking from the inside, just as a way of mediating all the different stories that come in our general direction.
I love that about Flame Tree Publishing, because you really do. Not only are you giving a platform to unheard voices or underrepresented voices, but the team that you work with and the people, like you say, the editors, are also from that background. So I think that's something that's really important and often something that's missed with major publishing companies, which is why they don't always get it right. I want to introduce somebody here, Kwame. He's one of my old friends, actually, Kwame McPherson, who won last year's competition. I don't know if it was last year, but the last competition for Hidden Realms, and I think you're in Alternate Histories. So let me bring you in and you can explain. Hello, Kwame, prolific writer.
Hello. Thank you for
So
having me,
introduce
Danny.
yourself first of all.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Part of that person, I'm also. Which you forgot to mention that I'm also the Commonwealth Short Story Prize winner for 2023 for the
Okay,
Caribbean
and because
and
I
for
knew
the
that you'd
world.
mention that, Kwame. I knew you would mention it. Say that loud again, one more time.
All right. So I'm the Commonwealth Short Story Prize winner for the Caribbean and for the world. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So yeah, and that's funny enough. Prior to winning that, I had written a number of submissions for Flame Tree. So you're right. The three submissions that I had successfully had was alternate history, immigrant stories, and I think there was a sci-fi one. So the three that I was very successful in. So yeah. So the experience has been good actually. So I must say to Nick, thank you for creating a space for diverse writers. It's enabling us to have our stories in a different space, and I'm pleased about it. And the process was very simple. So sorry.
Thank you for your story.
Yeah. But Danny knows I'm always writing, and I'm always
Yeah,
up for a challenge, and I'm always love the different genres and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I enjoy the experience of doing so, and I hope that I'll be able to submit again. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been good. It's been good. And like I said, credit to you for creating space. You know.
and you've got the books as well now, haven't you?
I have,
One of them.
funny enough, I'm in the Caribbean, so I got the next set coming tomorrow. I've got the first set. Yeah. So I got another set to come, and my sister's bringing them. I'm gonna get them tomorrow.
Amazing.
It is one. There's one disadvantage we have actually, because we encourage writers from around the world, everywhere around the world, but then we have to send we have to send the author copies. It costs a fortune.
Exactly.
So when I talk to our
Yeah.
accountant, what is this and that and that and that, and we cost it in right from the start. It's an
Yeah.
essential. Otherwise, you don't get the sense of this fabulous publication that you're actually in.
Exactly. So fortunate for me, I had it sent to a local address, and then it's shipped over to me. Someone will bring it over. So yeah, I get another set tomorrow when I see my sister.
Amazing. So, Kwame, tell us a little bit about your story and the process of working with Flame Tree. So
Oh
you
wow.
made your submission.
Yeah, my stories are African diasporan based in regards to the content. And so a lot of what I've been drawing on as of recently is that type of experience of that type of living in the African diaspora as well as in the Caribbean. So I try to bring different elements to my storytelling and to my story writing. So the stories, and like for example, even this new one that you want in terms of African ghost stories. I've been deliberating on Caribbean story, African Caribbean. What kind of story can I tell? So I'm working on something at the moment. But the process was very simple in terms of working with Flame Tree. I must admit, very simple. You get a contract, tell you what the contract is, it tells you what the process will be, and yeah, it's a very very quick process. And like I said, I personally speaking, I do like working with a publisher who is that efficient and professional. So yeah, I had no problems at all.
Fantastic. Thank
Thank you.
you. I guess that was one of the questions that some writers who have been interested were asking in terms of sort of African ghost stories. Obviously we have the Caribbean, we have Africa, we all derive from Africa, but define sort of where the line is with that.
Well, I think it's the perspective really, and I think I think if someone finds themselves writing a ghost story as though they were an American or grew up in a Celtic
Mm,
tradition, then it's not going to be quite right for us.
mm,
But there's nothing wrong with writing from where you live, because the flavour of your writing will come through, and that's
that's right.
really what we want to encourage. It's a personal voice
Mm.
that really matters. Not so much that it has a particular content, except of course that there is a theme. So we would want a ghostly perspective, or
Mm,
a perspective about a spirit. And generally speaking, it would be true to say that people from a different tradition, who have grown up with parents perhaps who come from from Africa, perhaps, or whose grandparents have come from Africa, they will have stories in their background.
Yes.
And a lot of what we publish is very much about the folk tales and the fairy tales that people have, the sort of bedside stories that young children have told to them by grandparents who come from different places. So that it is our expectation that really that we'll have that perspective, but it is the personal voice that really matters.
Got it. Yeah. Just a little side note here. In Jamaica, we call ghost duppy.
Duppy, yeah.
You know what I mean, Clive.
Yeah. I was gonna say actually, because like I said, attempting to write the story that I'm writing, I said, do I leave it at Duppy or do I write Goose? You know what I mean? Would it be understood if it's called Duppy? You know what I mean? So those are the things that you have to contend with trying to tell a story, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm a great believer though in using the language you want to use, because the story is what matters. The context, you're already in a volume called Ghosts.
Yeah.
I would expect some people to use the word spirit anyway, but these are English terms. These are English language terms.
Yeah.
So I think local is good.
Okay.
Perfect. That's good to know.
Naya Davis, who is entering this competition. I know that you have quite a lot of short stories that you've written, and I think you have one that is perfect for this. She says, I absolutely love this approach. Janine says, hello, Janine. It's one of our authors as well. Naya says, border-free storytelling. Exactly. And a space to control the narrative. That's right. So, Nick, for those who are watching, because I've had a lot of people who said that they're interested in submitting it, and we've had a few submissions. I'm giving people a bit more time. The closing date, everyone, is the 27th of August. Because it doesn't mean send it on the 27th of August. Please, if you can send it before that, it'd be great, because I know that I'm going to have a lot of submissions to read through. But can you give maybe some top 3 tips for people who are going to be entering this competition?
Yes, I would say that the first line and the first paragraph really matter.
Yes.
Because you're in a book with maybe 40 stories, 30, 40 stories, and you want to arrest the reader very quickly. So that's absolutely number one. Number 2, write it from the heart. It's very important. We want to know this is your story. Don't write it as though you were someone else.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, I think, although it's boring, communication is very important. So language is very important, and good language is very important. There's a difference between having a personal style and just not writing very well. And so it's not to do with correct grammar, but it is to do about it with effective communication. We've had some stories over the many books that we've done where people write in a sort of patois,
right,
which is difficult initially.
Yeah.
But once you're into the story and you're into the patois, then the story is strong. If the story is strong, it pulls you along. Right. So I'm emphasizing communication rather than correct grammar. Spell properly, but it might be as I said, a sort of patois really.
So be able to convey your ideas in a clear and effective way.
Yeah,
that's engaging as well. Thank you. I'm going to add a caveat to it. Those are 3 really good tips there. My first one would have been right from the heart, because that story, that strength, that authenticity is what comes through when you're trying to mimic another writer, or you're not being true to yourself. That shows when you're reading it. The second one is keep it simple. It's a short story. You want to be able to convey a simple idea in a short space of time. You can get your description in, get your twists and turns in, but if you're trying to add too many elements in such a short space of time, it then becomes too confusing. And maybe also quite overwhelming at the end when you're trying to resolve it all. Just adding to that, actually, Nick, so the word count for this is, I think it was between 2,000 and 4,000. There's a sweet spot there, isn't there, that you talk about?
Yes. I mean, we do occasionally allow, if we get a fantastic story which is 1,000 words, we might consider accurate, and sometimes we get a fantastic story at 6,000 words, and it's got to be so different from everything else.
Yeah.
So it's giving itself a hard task. So yes, 2,000 to 4,000, and generally speaking, I think you can express the theme in that sort of size, really.
Definitely. Well, Kwame, as you have won the competition, been one of the winners 3 times now, I didn't realize it was 3 times. Give us your top tips.
My top tips, well, like Nick said, actually, I think the first line and the first paragraph is where you grab the reader. You know what I mean? And then because you're taking them on a journey, and that's the whole idea, is that you engage them immediately and then take them on a journey and with the twists and turns. I'm a freestylist, so I allow the writing to flow wherever it needs to be going. So I tend to just find the first line and then whatever else comes in between, and then I go with it. Some people are plot writers, or plot. You know, they write by plot. So that would their way of doing it. So have an outline, whether it's a freestylist, or a plot writer. And there's then it could either be character driven or plot driven. So it depends on what someone's comfortable with. I tend to do both, and to mix, so that the different elements of the story can come out. But so my tip would be definitely to have the first line and the first paragraph to grab the reader, to engage the reader, and then depending on how somebody writes, find ways of getting both the plot and characterization in as the theme goes along. You know what I mean? So that's what I would say.
And there's something I read about Stephen King a long time ago, which is that he just comes up with a few good characters, puts them in a room, and sees how they interact together. When I started writing, I think it's P.D. James. I can't remember. It's P.D. I think it is P.D. James. She plots everything out in immense detail, and I tried to do that for a while, and I just didn't like it. I felt I was by the time I finished the right story, I was a bit exhausted. But the idea of seeing what happens and what grows, it's happened to suit me, and obviously it suits you. And you've come up with the polite version, freestyle. I know that has.
Was it pants swinging?
Your pants. Because it's a kind of nerve-wracking journey. You're always sort of teetering on the edge of not quite sure what's going on. And I love the process of writing. And everybody is different, but that's I just thought I'd share that. That's quite
it's the uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen, but also you're in control of what's happening. I love that analogy of leaving 3 completely random characters in the room and then just seeing what happens. You know, I think sometimes that's where the magic grows.
Exactly.
I mean, look at films, for example. Yes, they're plotted to a T. You've got the storyboards, you've got the script, you've got the actors who've learned their lines. But actually, some of the best scenes are when they have been left to practice and they come up with something by themselves, the actors, and it's often left in. And sometimes that is the most authentic or funniest part of the film.
Exactly.
So it's leaving that room, I agree, for that, that freestyle or pants swinging.
Yeah, because really and truly, there's stories around us every single day, every minute of every day. So if you allow your mind to go anywhere, you know what I mean, the imagination to just go, it would because we're taking a lot. So we can find something which will then come out because of what we're taking in. You know what I mean? So it doesn't have to be stringent in my mind. That we're taking so much. You use imagination, you be inspired and formulate something which can go in a completely different tangent if it was plot driven. You know what I mean? Also that. You know what I mean? If it was stringent. So that's so it's allowing the inspiration and the imagination to flow, I'd say.
Yeah.
Great. Kwame, I know that you CSSP. Tell us what that stands for again.
Commonwealth Short Story Prize.
So I know when you won that, I got the WhatsApp message. You were so excited. WhatsApp, Facebook, everything. It's one tell anyone. So I just want you to have the floor. Tell us about your experience as a writer, your books, and the CSSP experience.
It's fascinating because and I guess Nick can attest to this. When you're writing something, even though you may not have it successful at first time, it's about persevering. And one of the things I had learned in terms of my writing journey was to read other writers, to like I said, read magazines, to read everything that I could read or to consume. And then I found a style that suited my writing, or I found a way that I could get my voice out. So my process of writing, like I said earlier, was freestylist, but I also realized that I'm inspired by, playing in particular places and being like I'm back in Jamaica, for example. Being inspired by the colors and the vibrancy of around me. So the Commonwealth Short Story Prize was one of those things. I had entered it 9 times. 9 times. 8 of those times I was in the UK. And then the one time I'm back in the Caribbean, I've won everything. So like I said, so my inspiration came from being in a different environment. But because I haven't done anything marginally different from what I was doing in the UK, but it's just being inspired, and I guess it gave a different dimension and energy to what I had written. And the writing, like I shared earlier, it's a mixture of African diaspora and stories. So, for example, it's about an African Caribbean man in America being stopped by the police, potential of brutalization that could happen, him being rescued by his ancestors. So there's an element of African spirituality and family. So there's various elements within the story itself, and that's what the judges liked, and that's why the story itself won. So the entire experience with the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, like I said, was about perseverance and consistency. Because I always entered, and I didn't enter to win. I just entered because I love writing, I love telling stories, and that. But yeah, my story was successful and for the Caribbean and globally. So it goes to show that like I said, the judges liked what they saw or what they read.
Well, congratulations on being a winner. It's amazing. I've seen you've done some TV interviews as well. And how many books have you written so far?
Oh wow. I've lost count actually, and I've got some more to come because of the success of Commonwealth Short Story Prize, I've got agents asking me to write longer pieces. What's left in the pipeline? So I've got quite a lot of longer pieces that need to come. So I've written quite a number. I don't know, probably over 10 self-published. But the next one will be published by a publishing house, probably Flame Tree.
Yay!
Submit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, perseverance is very, very important. And there is credibility in what you've done, but it is the perseverance that makes the difference because life knocks you down. You have to be able to get up, and you have to be able to get up each time and keep moving forward. If it's something that drives you and you really want to do, then it does come out in the writing. I interviewed William Golding years and years ago, the author of Lord of the Flies.
Right.
And he was turned down by 26 publishers.
See?
And interestingly, so the concept of the Lord of the Flies did come out from that sort of Stephen King freestyling thing, your freestyling King, I have to call it now, which is putting children on an island without their parents. What would happen? And it became this rather bleak commentary on human savagery and how the boys in particular behave with each other. But just it is a fantastic story. But he was turned down by many publishers.
Yeah, I've come to realize that. And it's also about self-belief, believing in your writing. Just believe in your writing.
There's so many authors. As I run a workshop called The Power of Your Story, and actually this is the books that they use, the Book Journey Mentor's Guide to Self-Publishing, and there's a whole page of like a top 10 well-known authors, including Anne Frank, including Alice Walker, J.K. Rowling, all of those, how they were turned down by major publishing companies who are probably kicking themselves now, thinking, why on earth did we not publish this? If they had stopped at that first hurdle, then they wouldn't have become who they are. So I think, like you're saying, perseverance is absolutely key. I want to go on. John.
I'm just going to say, sometimes the reason for being turned down is not personal at all. It's because the story which is very similar, which they have, or it's set in the same way. And your story might be fabulous, or your book might be fabulous. It's just that particular publisher has just got one on the way, or just seen one. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to persevere.
And also, when you think about it, you were with me, I think, when we were sitting in on a talk by some publishers, and they said that they get over 300 entries or submissions each week, and you've got maybe 4 agents looking at this, looking through the work. It's a lot. Sometimes it just aren't the numbers. I'm going to quickly read out some comments, and then I'm going to put up a link. You can find out more about the submission guidelines in detail. Again, it is paid as well, so we can talk about that too in a second, and also the email address to send it to. But first of all, Naya has said, I now have a clearer idea where I will be taking my story submission, the story's directions. Thank you for this live. Glad I caught it. Excellent. Looking forward to some submissions from you, Naya. Marva says, Commonwealth Short Story Prize is one of the most respected competitions, so Kwame is real big in the dance. Amen.
Thank you, Marva.
You like that one, Kwame? Every favourite, that one. Thank you for the details. No problem. I hope you'll be entering. So the link here to find out more information, you can go directly to, here we go, flametreepublishing.com. Copy and paste it, please. It's like https://blog.flametreepublishing.com/fantasy gothic African ghost stories. But if you just go to the flametreepublishing.com website, you will be able to find it there. Please do submit to me, Daniela at Conscious Dreams Publishing. There is an email on the website, but please do submit to me, because I am one of the people who will be reading the manuscripts and passing it on to the selection process, and it will be a lot quicker. So yes, Daniela at Conscious Dreams Publishing, and there is the link for anybody who wants to find out any more information. It's
also might add your email onto that blog.
Yes, Nick.
I think I might add your email address on the blog just to avoid confusion.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you so much. Because I know a few people submitted it to the main one, but they've resubmitted to me, so that'd be brilliant. If anybody is watching and thinking, I would really love to submit something, but I'm not quite sure what, and maybe you have some questions, please do throw this up. We've got another 5 minutes. Throw up any questions that you may have about the African Ghost Story short story competition, or the process at all. Meanwhile, Nick, this is paid, because I know a lot of people might, enter some of these things, and sometimes they pay to have their work featured in another anthology, or perhaps it's not paid. Some publishers say it's for exposure. Tell us about the process of them submitting and what happens if they're successful.
Yeah, so I'm a great believer in paying people for their work.
Me too.
I mean, obviously, we do lots of other things, which allows me to say that. And so there are some circumstances where there are some publishers who simply can't afford to take the attitude I'm able to take, but because we can, we do. And so it's very important that we acknowledge people's hard work and their skill. And so Science Fiction Writers of America, actually they changed their name to the Science Fiction Writers Association, quite sensibly.
Okay.
They have what they call pro rates, which is an acknowledged standard for the money that people should be paid and it allows them to qualify as well. It gives a qualifying mark, so we are a qualifying market, and so we pay the equivalent of 8 cents a word for new stories. So it means that people, when they submit, they'll be getting a few £100, and they get a license, and the copyright is theirs still. So we are using it just in this volume, in this particular collection. So we wouldn't use it for anything else. So it's very much a proper publishing process. So as I said, the payment of it is very important. It works out at about 6 pence per word, something 6 or 7 pence, depending on the exchange rate. But the other thing
that doesn't mean send in 10,000 words, right?
That's fine. That sweet spot of 2,000 to 4,000 is very important.
Yeah, exactly.
We do that. You can see them thinking at the end, "Oh, I'll prove this." The end could do with another 2,000 words. No.
The end can do with another 2,000 words on this short story.
Yeah. Bit of lag moves on.
or saying something that could be said really succinctly in, a plethora of words.
Yes.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Yeah, because actually there's one other thing that kind of follows on from that. We edit. We do a very, very light edit on these collections because the voices are so different.
Yeah.
We try not to rationalize. If we have a novel, we do have a style sheet, and then we discuss it with the author, and the author may have a particular way of wanting to do something. But for short story collections, we want the authentic voice of the author to come through, and so that means really not overcorrecting. So, for instance, and if a Caribbean author or a Nigerian author, both writing in English, they will have a different style, which is their style. We will preserve that. So that is an important consideration.
100%.
Yeah. And to add to that, Nick, is right. It wasn't the editing that I received. Kept the voice, kept the story alive by not making heavy editing.
Yes.
But it was really, really easy to deal with,
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Good. Glad to hear it.
So I don't have any more questions. Do you have any last sort of wise words from us, either of you?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Nick. I say that, people who love writing stories, love writing stories and love to tell stories. This is a fabulous opportunity, and just write and submit. You never know where your writing can take you. That's what I've learned. You never know where your writing can take you.
To the Commonwealth Short Story Prize winner.
And the first Jamaican to do so, the very first Jamaican. Even though we've had numerous and wonderful writers, I'm the first Jamaican to win a Global Literary Award.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Throw up your Jamaican flags if you're watching on the replay.
Yeah. I'm the first Jamaican to win a Global Literary Prize. There you go.
Brilliant.
That's astonishing, isn't it? And there's so many people who write great stories who are not recognised. So that's a story we all need to hear. Really, a success story like that. That's really good.
Thank you.
I'm just what you've said. Really, that tell the story, tell a good story, tell your own story. That's your voice is important.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both of you. It's been amazing speaking with you again, and wow, this is the first time you've actually met properly online.
Yeah, it is actually.
So maybe we need to do more of these. And Kwame, I think I need to interview on one of my shows, most definitely.
Come on, anytime you're ready, just let me know. Come on,
no problem.
I gotta go out in the sunshine now and get ready for an event tonight.
Oh, it's always showing off that it's moved to Jamaica. Okay. Thank you so much, Kwame. Thank you so much, because I absolutely love what you do and working with you. So join us next week, where I'll be interviewing the awesome and amazing Tabi, who wrote a book over lockdown called Lockdown at Go-Go's, and it's illustrated by her beautiful 10-year-old,
nice,
which is 11 now, granddaughter Palesa.
Oh, wow.
She did all the illustrations in the book, so you can see the front cover. And who helped her write it? Her granddaughter, fumbling around. You can meet her. They're all gonna be there. This is the old version, sorry. So they're all gonna be online with us next Thursday, 7 p.m. GMT, 2 p.m. EST, where they'll be speaking about this brilliant book, Lockdown at Go-Go's. Talks about the experience living with their grandmother over this very bizarre time that feels like it never happened, and how it actually enhanced their relationship. So yes, thank you everybody so much for joining. Have a beautiful evening.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nice meeting you. Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
See you next week. Bye.